Day 804 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So, starting off, we'll take a look at the Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 477,000 military personnel losses, which represents an additional 970 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 13 tanks, 19 APVs, and 30 artillery. Then we'll head back across to the map today into the very east of Ukraine, as in the dead of night, an oil depot in occupied Luhansk was rocked by a barrage of ATACMS missiles, according to the claims by the Moscow-installed head of the region. The strike ignited a massive blaze, engulfing the facility in flames. Telegrammers from the region also advised that the emergency crews were battling to contain the inferno. Now, Ukrainian officials have yet to comment on the claims, although due to the range and destruction, not to mention the remnants of an expended ATACMS motor and airframe spotted near the site, it certainly more than just hints at the long-range firepower employed in this attack. Then, also, and in the last day, another Su-34 Russian jet promoted to land vehicle. Because in a devastating blow, this Su-34 jet has a number of sources from both sides in this conflict, confirming the down-in. For instance, military channels confirmed the loss of the jet, which bore the designation of 21, as it was specifically this aircraft, as shown from an old photo. Another sad day for Russian aviation. Then, still in the Donbass, we'll zoom right in, as recent geolocated footage showed that Russian forces made slight advancements along the railway line west of Sheratonah, indicating ongoing offensive operations in the area. But these movements were quite slight and failed to make any noticeable differences on the map. Also, in an interesting development, Russian forces have been deploying infantry on motorcycles for several weeks now, and particularly in the Novomikhailivka area. The strategy aims to rapidly transport soldiers to key positions that must be swiftly seized and held. So by utilizing the speed and agility of motorcycles, Russian forces hope to present a small, fast, and elusive target, difficult for Ukrainian troops to neutralize. However, the 79th Brigade of Ukraine has released a bunch of footage showcasing the destruction of these Russian motorcycle units on the Novomikhailivka front. So in theory, it's a great idea, but one does have to understand that the usage of motorcycles in a wartime environment is not a good idea, let alone in the age of drone warfare. Add to that, they have even less protection than those Chinese golf buggies that Russia uses. And then for this larger area, General Alexander Syrsky, the highest ranking officer in Ukraine's military, concluded a 2-day tour of command posts near the embattled Avdiivka region. Syrsky conferred with field commanders, focusing on orchestrating personnel, armaments, and resources to maximize enemy casualties while minimizing Ukrainian losses. Despite Russia's superiority in manpower and firepower, Syrsky emphasized holding the line, employing artillery, drones, and all available means to decimate the invaders and undermine their objectives, to buy time for reinforcements under mobilization and training. But in an unrelated piece of news, and some welcome news for the AFU on this front, or should I say from the AFU on this front, is that they recently advised that a Ukrainian 2S7 Pion and PZH-2000 artillery unit have received new supplies of shells, and are currently working towards delivering them onto Russian positions. And we expect to hear even more news on this angle more and more soon. Then headed around and looking on the map, so somewhere in the east, and so first up, and as a reminder, never have your latest and greatest abandoned Russian T-90 tank hatches left open in the event that you hope to retrieve them later, as we saw with this event. Because they're expensive, they have very small production volumes, if any these days, and there's a very finite amount of stock left too. Then, also in the east, another Russian T-72 tank bites the dust while trying to give covering fire for retreating Russians. Then also in the east, and something that you don't see every day, a Bradley IFV infantry fighting vehicle destroyed a Russian T-80 tank using a TOW anti-tank missile. And as for a reminder about the TOW missiles, or the tube-launched, optically tracked wire-guided anti-tank missiles, these missiles are connected by a thin wire to the launch platform. This wire transmits guidance data between the missile and the operator, allowing the operator to guide the missile to its target even after it's been fired. This physical connection is what might be referred to as the physical line that makes it not susceptible to counter EW measures. Then also in the east, Ukrainian FPV kamikaze drones destroyed 2 Russian BMPs. These are the Russian Soviet infantry fighting vehicles. And every time with these events, they never cease to have a massive explosion, chock full of ammunition. Then lastly for the east, a Ukrainian FPV drone attacks another of the now rare Russian 220mm heavy flamethrower MLRS TOS-1A systems in the Bakhmut area. So unfortunately for this machine specifically, so much firepower but so little range, less than 4 miles of range. It was not designed for this war. Then moving around on the map, because in the same spirit of losses in the east, but this time in the south, as in a crippling blow to Russian air defenses, a launcher and launcher loader of the advanced 9K81M2 S300 V4 complex, the air defense system, lay in ruins in the Zaporizhia region. The once formidable surface-to-air missile system designed to shield Russian forces from aerial threats now stands as a twisted heap of metal. You see, the destruction of these critical components deals a significant setback to Russia's ability to maintain air superiority in the region, leaving their troops vulnerable to Ukrainian airstrikes. And at this rate, and one day sooner or later, the only air defenses Russia will own are those ones surrounding the Kremlin for Putin's safety. And I'm actually more convinced of this than ever now. But it won't be like waking up one day finding out Russia cannot defend itself from aerial threats anymore. Instead, it will be a consistent ramp up in successful Ukrainian strikes into Russian occupied territories and the Russian motherland. And so given Ukrainian successes up until this point, it's fair to say we're already starting to see this on some level. Then headed across to some news for the day. So Quantum Systems, a German company, has established a second drone factory and development hub in Ukraine. This strategic partnership aims to expedite the supply of crucial reconnaissance drones to the Ukrainian armed forces. The new facility is set to boost Quantum Systems' production capacity to an impressive 1,000 drones annually, including spare parts. With a planned investment of €6 million over the next 2 years, the company is demonstrating its commitment to support Ukraine's defense capabilities inside of Ukraine. Also, the Quantum Systems CEO emphasized the significance of this collaboration, stating, quote, "With our own plant, we want to express our trust in Ukraine and our conviction that the future of drone technology is being written here." And to date, Quantum Systems has already provided Ukraine with 212 Vector reconnaissance drones, with plans to deliver a total of 500 by the end of the year, which Ukraine has effectively utilized quite well already to minimize casualties and counter Russian advances, integrating them into their strike teams that coordinate tactical operations via satellite communications. Then headed across to some Russian hardware news of a sort. So, as in a startling revelation, the Russian independent outlet Moscow Times reported that Irkut, a major Russian Su-30 fighter jet producer, has been buying back its own military equipment previously sold to foreign partners. Customs data has revealed that the company repurchased equipment worth over $400 million in 2022 and 2023. Signaling a significant shift in Russia's defense industry from exports to domestic needs amid the ongoing full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Moscow Times noted that the company began repurchasing its own supplies from abroad even before the outbreak of the full-scale invasion back in 2021, with imports peaking at 581 million in 2021, followed by about 320 million in 2022, and just a measly 95 million in comparison in 2023. So with figures like that, obviously in a steep and downwards trajectory. But wait, Russia can just build some more jets, can't they? Well, technically yes, if you count just the few per annum produced. And I think it was about 11 per annum on the pre-sanctioning days. Though I'm also fairly certain that they can't even produce 3 annually these days, due to all of the sanctions prohibiting the import of high-end Western tech, which Russian jets just happen to be chock full of. So as we can see, Russia needed to import back its own produced equipment, which more or less brings to an end any aggressive postures by Soviet military equipped nations, which would ironically need to find completely new suppliers in a hope to wage its wars. And Western countries would not be selling. I mean, the long-standing implications for this war, it's just incredible. But hey, maybe those countries can purchase the Chinese J-31 knockoff of the USA F-35. But I wouldn't recommend the Chinese J-31 jet. It's just not good. At all. Then in some more Russian hardware news updates, because in a shocking new disclosure, Reuters reported that approximately half of the North Korean ballistic missiles launched by Russia towards Ukraine have deviated from their intended trajectories and exploded mid-air, according to the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office. So, Ukrainian prosecutors have examined the debris of 21 missiles and shared data on their failure rate with the news agency. Andriy Kostin, Ukraine's top prosecutor, stated that about half of the North Korean missiles lost their programmed paths and detonated in the air, making debris recovery impossible in such cases. Although the number of missiles provided by Pyongyang to Moscow represents a small fraction of Russia's overall stockpiles, as North Korea sent a lot less than we had all initially expected it would. And this all comes as North Korea provided Russia with larger batches of the 152mm Soviet artillery shells, only to find many of them simply caused Russian artillery barrels to explode. So objectively, it would appear that there is a fair amount of correlation between corruption-based societies and the failure rates of the weapons they have. Then moving across to some inside of Russia news, as an Airbus A321 flight from Moscow to Orenburg experienced a technical emergency shortly after takeoff on Monday. The aircraft, which departed at 1:27 p.m. Moscow time, sent out a distress signal and had to return to the airport, landing safely at around 3:05 p.m. Reports suggest that faulty sensors on board the aircraft gave a false reading of cockpit depressurization, prompting the pilot to drop altitude from 32,000 feet to about 10,000 feet, briefly disappearing from radar and raising concerns of a more serious malfunction. As such, the incident highlights the struggles faced by Russian airlines in maintaining their aircraft due to Western sanctions. Now, back in 2023, Russian airlines suffered 74 in-flight emergencies, more than double the 2022 figure, according to JackDeck, a German research company. Experts warn that the persistent technical problems pose significant risks to passengers and aircrew as Russian airlines attempt to keep their fleets airborne through improvised repair and maintenance programs and cannibalization of parts. As a result, these approaches raise serious concerns about potential consequences and safety for Russian civil aviation. And I've said it so many times before already, but just stop, Russia, before you hurt yourself and then start blaming the wicked West because of it. And if the West is so wicked, then why use Western planes at all? Expired lease planes, by the way, and therefore stolen planes. Cognitive dissonance. Then, as for what might seem like a bit of a change in tone, because as for some good news for Russia, as after about 4 months of repairs, Rosneft's Tuapse oil refinery has resumed operations following a drone strike earlier this year. The attack, which occurred on January 25th, sparked a fire at the facility and was part of a series of strikes on oil depots across Russia, including Bryansk, Oryol, and the Leningrad Oblast at the time. The Tuapse refinery, located in Russia's Krasnodar Krai, is considered one of the largest oil processing plants in southern Russia. However, in recent months, Ukraine has intensified its attacks on Russia's oil industry, aiming to reduce the processing capabilities of multiple facilities. So as for the future outlook for this facility, it's probably going to be just like the Crimean Bridge all over again, as we see no signs of abating from the Ukrainian end, as the likelihood of renewed attacks on this facility and many others is all but a certainty at this point. Then with some more news, because in a lavish ceremony marked by military pomp and religious fervor, Vladimir Putin was officially sworn in for his 5th presidential term just yesterday. Putin arrived at the Grand Kremlin Palace in the Oris Senate limousine, accompanied by outriders on electrical motorcycles. In his acceptance speech, he hailed his victory as the consolidated will of millions and a, quote, colossal force, emphasizing the need for stability and flexibility in Russia's state system. Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs denounced the ceremony as an attempt to create an illusion of legality for Putin's 21st century rule of the country. Nearly 25 years now. Also, the European Parliament deemed the election results illegitimate and undemocratic, while PACE, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, recognized Russia as a dictatorship. Now, Russia's Patriarch Kirill, in a prayer service, wished Putin eternal rule, comparing him to medieval ruler Alexander Nevsky. And we also saw some mainstay figures of Russia attend the event, not the least of which was Kadyrov, looking a little worse for wear, needing some assistance from 2 of his goons to help take his jacket off. But you know me, any chance to add Kadyrov into the news, I'll take it. Then to a quick Russian military mobilization blunder segment today, guys, as wounded soldiers and families of wounded soldiers returning home from the Ukraine war made an appeal video to their government stating that wounded compensations nor disability pensions have been provided to these individuals. But they failed to recognize, as with many others, that their Kremlin overlords have gone all in on this botched invasion of Ukraine, and that there's no money left over for anything that doesn't benefit the war in Ukraine. Truly reprehensible actions and a complete dereliction of duty from the Kremlin, who has completely forgotten about its people and the fallout effects or the aftermath from its aggressive foreign policy decisions. Then headed across to a super quick funny to round it all off for today, guys. So behold, the latest addition to the Great Russian Shed Wars of 2024, the MTLB Shed. So clearly installations like these are not just used for Russian tanks deployed at the front lines, but also for these armored personnel carriers in the rear as well. And the situational awareness, or lack thereof, continues to just baffle me with these gargantuan monstrosities that are all too easy to spot from a distance. They're absolutely massive. But of course, no shed vehicle would be complete without a little slither of a cope cage or cope trampoline on top. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment. I do appreciate everything there, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.